Welcome to the Pathfinder Legacy Podcast, where we help farmers, ranchers, and business owners create a seamless transition plan for the future. From retirement to ownership transfer, we protect what you've built and guide you every step of the way.
Hello, welcome back to the Pathfinder Legacy Podcast. I have a special interview that I'm doing today with Dr. Bruce Pedersen. He is a local veterinarian that has been in our Watford City area for a number of years. So welcome, Dr. Bruce.
Thank you, Heidi.
All right, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about you and your background and what brought you here to Watford City?
Certainly, that's a big, long question, but no, it started from a veterinary classmate of mine named Jesse Walworth. He was from a town, and kind of rewind back to 2008 in the recession.
Mm-hmm.
So I had an ATO career, so I wasn't currently practicing any of that. And he said, yeah, they're looking for a veterinarian in Watford City. And so I came out to visit in 2012, actually. And that's when I met Dr. Nelson, and we initially leased his building. And that's when we kind of planted a flag here in Watford City.
Okay. All right. Very good. So you had another colleague or associate that you had introduced you to the area. Otherwise, you might have a thought of moving to Northwest South Dakota to begin your practice and continue your career.
Correct. I originally grew up in Nebraska, and then the two of us went to Kansas City. That's where North Dakota used to have several seats reserved for North Dakota residents. So he was one of those, and I was from Nebraska. And Nebraska and North Dakota is not a big jump in both culture or technology, quality of life. So it just seemed like a natural fit. And then the need was there. So we started the practice, and it just took off.
Okay. I went from there. So talk a little bit, stepping back before you became doctor of veterinary medicine, talk about where you grew up and some of your family history. Let's step back a little bit. So you were telling me earlier that really you have a son that is also practicing veterinary medicine, but he is what you would say the fifth generation practicing. So let's start back to where you had that first inkling of where your family started in veterinary.
Sure. And I like to let my mind wander on some of these deeper philosophical questions, one of which is free will. Do we have free will? And I did a little bit of research after my father passed, and I found out that people in healthcare are 23 times more likely to go into the field of their parents.
Okay.
And just got me thinking that, and I never see anything but natural, but the fifth generation of my son, and he surprised me. I thought I wouldn't have really necessarily encouraged him to do it, and just said, hey, Dad, I want to do that. I'm like, oh, that's nice. But I grew up traveling with my father from as early as I can remember, like literally a toddler. And one of my earliest memories was he had these big, strapping, large animal vet arms and couldn't pull this little piglet out of the gill. So he woke me up out of the truck, stuck my silly little 6-year-old arm in there, and managed to get this piglet out. So my dad was a vet, my son's a vet, my grandfather was a dairy farmer.
Okay.
So we kind of fudge a little bit on maybe a vet and a caregiver.
It's still very much in that area of having to take care of things.
Oh, absolutely. And then I spent all my summers from times 8 on that dairy farm.
So you learned a lot about the herd health,
Just
hoof care.
Jabs, and they also farmed. So it was all about cutting hay, cutting thistles, driving a Ford tractor. It was back in the day when there were no age limits or child or labor laws. So you just drove a tractor. So to kind of on the veterinary side though, then my great grandfather was a blacksmith. He actually came across from Denmark, brought my grandfather and his 9 total siblings through Ellis Island. When my grandfather was the middle child, and I think he was 6 years old when they came across.
Okay.
But the blacksmith back in the day was, the the workhorse is more the livelihood. So for farming, but they also perform a lot of veterinary. Veterinary as an industry wasn't really developed then. So
they were starting, and they were already doing constructive issues and so forth with horses and so forth, doing as farriers and so forth. So, and just building off of that. And also while they're at the farrier and the blacksmith, then they were working on the animal health, and it just built from there. So he had that.
Yeah. No, the blacksmith was kind of local, wouldn't call it a witch doctor, but he did the best they could with what they have. And of course, the shoe and foot is a big part of them. Of course, so they were the podiatrists, the farriers.
So building from there. So we were initially from Denmark, through Ellis Island, and it took them to central Nebraska, where they left central Nebraska, where they settled, and they homesteaded there in central Nebraska.
Correct.
Okay. And then they started with farming. They're more of kind of corn belt, where that part of Nebraska had a little bit of ranching as well.
Yep. Like a lot of the small farms, you'd have, you'd run the cows on the stalks, you'd harvest the corn. It was more of not so much a fragmented, it was more self-sustaining. You milk the cows and had some pigs. Yeah. It was a lot different. And even in my life, I've seen it. I got a little bit of that, and now it's just evolved to more corporate work, consolidation, more specialization, even in agriculture.
Right. Figuring out really how to maximize the profit of your property that you have, and figuring out what the best and highest use is, and making a living as you
exactly
keep moving with it.
I think the markets were different too. I think a lot more of the markets were more local, but yeah, it definitely is extremely different now than back when there was a little family farm on every quarter of every section.
I mean, within an arm's reach. I mean, we talk about where our neighbors are at now. I mean, we might have neighbors that we call them, they're 10 miles away. And at that time, when our ancestors homesteaded, neighbors were within a mile to 5 miles away. So they were very close.
So even off a section, like a quarter around, you could farm a lot, half section. A section was like a big farm, before irrigation and a lot of the other things.
Okay. So then once your great grandpa was over here, and then your grandpa had a dairy farm operating there. And then from there, then your dad picked up the veterinary medicine, and he practiced for, how many years did your dad practice?
Well, truth be known, he never quit. So he was pretty much dabbling even until the day he died. But he probably maybe 10 years. So he was in his 70s.
Okay.
As far as full time, but he worked out of school at practice in Kansas, and then we grew up in southeast Nebraska, where he owned and practiced. And then he kind of got into, he specialized more in dairy cow fertility. So he created a niche, and then traveled, a little bit more traveling with his craft, but still in that Nebraska area.
So then when you remember, you been with your dad all through those years growing up and being kind of his right hand, doing things. Did you have other brothers that were doing the same thing?
Two sisters, younger, and they would go along as well, but they never pursued.
They didn't pursue that.
They're interesting. My older sisters, she has 5 kids, and almost all of them went into healthcare.
Okay.
And they're all, taking names, doing really well. Certain CRNAs, and one's a firefighter, one's accomplished, not just,
Yep. They've done
competition. I mean, you can say it doesn't exist, but there's still
very
ways and what you can do with your life. But they stayed in that realm of healthcare. They're also still a theme of animal lovers and interests throughout the family, all stuff for it. Yeah.
So then so you being the middle child and the only son, and the main one that was going with your dad every day. So you really picked up on a lot of things, not just that your dad was working more with dairy genetics and so forth, but you were going with him and learning and got that knack that's the future that you were thinking for yourself was veterinary medicine. And was there anything that stands out to you in your time working with your dad, any of those memories or days that you were maybe putting in long days, anything that stands out that you really enjoyed?
I got a lot of memories. I remember the small, because he did mixed animals well, still predominantly large. But yeah, I think I stayed my first cat when I was 16 years old. Which isn't heard of or recommended. And
Right.
I think I could get in trouble. There's hopefully a statute of limitations. No, it was just a different era. And one of the things that shifted in his lifetime, and I got the beginning of it, where large animal medicine was what a veterinarian was. And the small animals were, before that even emerged as a practice, you were kind of called a flea picker. If you were just a small animal veterinarian, you were smallie. And now the tables have turned. You're kind of frowned upon if you're a knuckle dragging large animal vet versus a small animal. But the beautiful thing is in rural medicine, which is what he practiced and where my heart really is. And some of us sent from some of these memories of, treating a gunshot wound on a dog, to casting leg, to herd of cattle. So many of them, kind of all across the board. But yeah, I have countless memories.
Just a wide variety. Too many to try to delve into all of them. But anyways, it spiked your interest to move forward with your career. So your dad practiced up until he was, would you say 70?
Yeah, like I say, all the way until he died. He just passed away doing things. But he died in 82. And I think a lot of farmers included, they never really quit.
No.
Most of their mind.
No. And I'm finding that so not only just working with the farmers and ranchers, but working with business owners, doing succession planning and so forth, you never really walk away or stop doing that work, because that's that trait. That's what that's what's been in your blood and your livelihood for so many years. It's really hard just to turn that switch off. Yeah.
I also think it's dangerous. I know my father had a particular 2 bachelors that milk cows. And it was just an insane number of years, decades, that they did not listen to milking. Like anyone who's milked cows knows that is probably one of the most hardest. Doesn't care how you feel, sick or not, just showing a cow that we milk.
Yeah.
And so these accrued this huge empire of wealth. They decided to retire within 6 months, dead.
Really?
Yeah. And I think that's a pretty consistent theme. And I don't know if it's the shock on your identity but I'd say retirement is kind of a dirty word, or you need to shift gears or at least have something in place with. They had a succession where they gave this foundation. So they invest in large animal vet students from Nebraska or going to Kansas City. And they would have a scholarship fund.
So they did really good with their fund, with their estate that they did have. They had a plan. They did good with it. It's just unfortunate that they weren't able to see their plan in action. Oh, what is the thing to really think about is we've worked so dang hard all our life, and we've got this vision of the future and what we want to see happen with it. And then we retire, but we haven't slowly worked out of it. We just all of a sudden, for some of those families that have done that. And then that just takes really the breath right out of us. We're not having that slow transition to really figure out where we want to be. And the cow is just, like I said, should turn that switch off.
Yeah. Well, I think it brings us to the points too about sustainability, or the privilege of getting to see your end. And I've always thought about almost like a living funeral, or have a hard back end. Maybe you seem to live. It sounds crazy, but even if some way to make that, get your affairs in order where you don't have to worry about it after it's done, so you can still have whatever that remainder is. But I don't know if you've read Warren Buffett's last letter to his shareholders.
I have not.
I'll try to send that to you. But the crux of it was that they had this will or this estate, this magic genie pot for everybody that you should do it before you die, and have it all set up. And that's what we've been trying to do with my mom and my father-in-law. And even, Heather and I are not quite ready, but you never know. And you just need to survive. So all these things that do come into play. But yeah, so to bring it back to the Olson brothers, or, and you have to look far to see that if you don't, it's a disaster. And why not be able to enjoy some of that fruits of what you've earned?
Absolutely. And see that giving during your lifetime, and see what you've worked so hard for. Now see your money working hard, and what really the fruits of your labor are bringing forth. So you talked a little bit before we jumped on the call today, you talked a little bit about your dad and after your dad passed away. So your dad really was true and true. He was a Nebraskan, and you tried to get him back to the ranch before he passed away. His health just didn't allow him to do that. But you really are doing some things with your state. Your mom's still living there. I want to talk a little bit about what you guys are really trying to do to keep that legacy and how that's working for you.
Yeah, I think this is probably fairly common out there too, where the energy or the memories, like land isn't just land to the family, like anyone else, an investor or it's another piece of property to rent. So we call it a ranch, but it's about 160 acres in north central Nebraska that he bought in the 90s. So that's where we would, majority of our family reunions, and there were still some where we grew up in high school, but this was the place that we had. So the goal became to try to pass that on, not just as a monetary amount that disappears. Once it comes into money, it's no different. A dollar's a dollar. So, but how do you put a price on the memories and the ability to continue to enjoy that? So it's not an easy task. But that is the goal, is to make succession of being able to pass this property through generations. So we developed a family corporation and created the bylaws that become the rules of voting. And then, it's a little bit of hay ground, but it doesn't have enough to pay the taxes. So we're trying to create ways to cash flow the property so it won't carry itself. In addition, my mom still lives there. So that's where we still go. One of the most rewarding and motivators for me was when our kids, we have 3 kids, when they were young, we would ask, so where's your favorite place in the world? And it was grandma and grandma. Yeah. So that was kind of why would, if you sell it, it's gone. And granted, you don't want it to be this rundown thing that the raccoons live in, right? So how do you upkeep it, still enjoy it? And the reality is sometimes it doesn't come, say fancy, but you gotta and there's probably not everyone's going to equally, but you want to have, let them have access to it. Let's still make it alive.
Yep. Still keep it going, make it viable for everyone to come back and continue to have those memories. So even after your mom was gone, if you guys wanted to sit around the kitchen table and still have Thanksgiving, you can do that.
Yep. And
take your families out, your grandchildren and so forth, out hunting and enjoying the land and creating those memories that you grew up with. So how to do that, you guys created a family corporation. So in Nebraska, so that way you can do it. You've got some operating funds that you can use to continue to care for the property, in addition to how you can make it continue to be viable and add additional income. So perhaps some other recreational things that you guys might be looking into doing as well. But your mom, and she's still living there. That's something I want to touch a little bit on. Your mom's still living there. She is how old?
She's 86.
She's 86 years old. And she is still living on the property and able to care for herself. She is thriving and doing very well. They've been there for how many years have your parents been?
That would be probably almost 40 years there, I would think.
So 40 years.
6, 8, 34 years, maybe.
Okay. And your dad has been gone for about 5 years. So you told me. So your mom living on her own, but she's still able to be in her home. She's still around. She's got everything around her that she still is very comfortable in, instead of moving into town. How many times have we said you can take the farmer off the farm, but you can't ever take the farm out of it? But even though, backing up on that, can you really take the farmer off the farm? Because so many times if you take them out of their environment, they don't flourish or thrive like they did when they were living there and operating it and really having that environment. So if your mom was to move, she might not have the health that she has now because she's comfortable.
Oh yeah, no, I think there's huge data supporting that, as well as the mind-body connection. Like your when you say mental health, just your mental well-being is connected to your longevity. No different than Bachelors you talked about earlier that died when their identity is milking cows away. So I think finding that, the other bias that I have, and it's kind of different with my mom. She's just, as much as she was around animals, she's not as much as an animal person as the rest of us. But I'm a firm believer in the power of animals and ecology and longevity. And how this ties in is it's actually my grandmother and I that have had these discussions a lot about a more intimate connection with animals at some of these facilities. So if you do have to take them off, because at some point it's not always realistic. And like we talked about, I think with enough forethought and resources, you can almost create your micro retirement home on your place. And some of the costs of this level of what's it called, tertiary or whatever the final care is, where, you're pretty much not a good way.
Right. Yeah. End of life,
or I can't get the word for it, but yeah, ideally do that on the farm. But if not, to have some of these homes that could be retooled and made to be more farm like, and I know there's some models out there that have done that, but yeah, what would that be worth to have?
Right.
An Angus looking in your window in the morning, or
right.
a cow running up and down the hall.
Oh yeah. It's feel much better than being confined in an assisted care facility.
Yeah.
Have you guys done any of that with your mom, where she's at?
Well, we're trying to, like, she had a hip replaced last year, but other than that, she's been in pretty good shape. But I think there's actually a trade show called Mobility, and it's like throughout the country. So that's one on my list for this year. So I'm going to try to go with one of those and then a lot of them is just ergometric design, no stairs. And the way we did the house is currently laid out, it's okay. But I'm like, Mom, whatever you want, we'll build it. And she's like, yeah, I'm okay. Because you get comfortable with, even though the refrigerator, you got to walk down the hall under second fridge. Yeah. So no, we're working on it. And I think there's some, kind of an addition to, with the property, but then if you have that, then who's ever next in succession, create that and also monetize it. Because I think the way insurance is set up is if you do it, you can get paid by a lot of your carriers. I don't know, Medicaid.
Get some deductions or some benefits back for that would be something that we'd have to look into a little bit further. But I do know there are some benefits out there that if you are making those adjustments, because nursing homes are over reached capacity. They're so expensive. It's not as always, and the care isn't always the level of care we want to see for our loved ones or family members. So really keeping them at home, keeping them close to their environment and their level of what they've been used to for the last 34 years for your mom being at home. In addition, that's where a home is. So then everybody comes back to visit and your mom gets visitors. Then
she's accompanied quite a bit. I will say it's been although it's one of the more frustrating things on the planet is to do first level tech support for your parents or anyone for that matter, but your parents, like test the patients. But man, I'm just still amazed at how much it's changed. You're kept them connected, with what's happening with the family. So, even if it's just a FaceTime call or even just a regular call, I think
you could still do that. So talk about that. So what technology have you guys used with your mom? Because how close is the closest family member?
They're not too far away. One of my nieces lives a couple miles away.
Okay.
And then my sister's maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours, or 3 hours away. So they're not terrible, but they still, don't get up there that often. So I'd say the grandkids, there's 14 grandchildren between the three of us, and they have their own little, which I don't even stay up on, but they have a Snapchat group and a Facebook thing.
And your mom is included?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
so an
84-year-old Snapchatter.
Yeah.
She's keeping up on between Facebook and Snapchat. She's just jumped right in with both feet to keep.
She has its glitches, but she's got an iPad and iPhone and an iMac, so she's in the Apple ecosystem.
There you go.
Does well. So I think that's been a big plus because I can't imagine some of those families that those people that don't have support, they're just lonely, just that deep loneliness.
Yeah. And then you said in with, depression and anxiety and other mental health issues that come into play then when you don't have that human connection, you're anybody there with you. So that's really nice. So you all take team on having to be IT techs for your mom or getting married.
Oh, pretty good. I do some, and she's pretty good, but once in a while the simplest things, not that one, and
she's learning.
She's learning.
She's very much so. I think we're getting to the end of our first episode. We're going to continue here after a bit, but we're going to pause there for a minute and then we'll pick back up. So just a fun story that we're going to continue with Dr. Bruce today. Go ahead and feel free to continue to watch and listen. And if you want to connect with me, you can find me at pathfinderlegacy.com. And at the end of the day, if you don't have a plan, you're walking through life blindly. So make sure that you've got your glasses on and you have a plan. So, all right. Until next time, I'll see you between the ditches.
Thanks for listening to the Pathfinder Legacy Podcast, where your future is our focus. Be sure to subscribe, follow us on social media, and visit us at pathfinderlegacy.com to start building your transition plan today.